This is the story of the ravens who remember faces. In 2009, researchers in Seattle set out to study something most people never think about: whether birds could recognize individual humans. Because, we all know that dogs can do it. But what about birds? So they decided to capture some ravens and tag them to see if they could remember their human captors. But there was a problem. Ravens are wild animals and they don't exactly let just anyone get close to them. So the researchers had to wear masks while they captured the birds so they wouldn't be scared. And that's when the researchers realized that maybe, just maybe, they didn't need to wear the masks. When they turned around, all the ravens they had just captured had not only remembered their faces, but they also remembered their voices. And they weren't the only ones. When the researchers visited other bird feeders in the area, they found that the birds there also remembered their faces. In fact, some of the birds in the study recognized the researchers even 5 years later. But why would birds do this? I mean, it's not like they're known for being super intelligent or anything. Well, it turns out that recognizing familiar faces is actually a useful adaptation for birds. For example, some birds will steal other birds' eggs and eat them. So if a bird knows who's around, they're less likely to be vulnerable to egg theft. Similarly, if a bird sees a human face, they're less likely to fall prey to a cat or dog that happens to be lurking nearby. Of course, that doesn't explain why these particular ravens remembered the researchers' faces, but it does give us a clue. Maybe they recognized them from their work with other birds. So the researchers decided to check it out. And what they found was even more shocking. Not only did the ravens recognize them from their work with other birds, but they also recognized them from their work with other humans. For example, one of the researchers, John Marsleff, had a run-in with a raven that he had tagged 3 years earlier. He says, "I looked up and there was this huge raven that landed on a nearby tree and just stared at me. And I thought, oh my gosh, this bird remembers me." But it gets even better. John and his colleagues also noticed that the birds seemed to remember their faces better when they were wearing their signature hats. So they decided to conduct an experiment. They took 2 groups of untrained researchers and had them interact with the birds while wearing either a baseball cap or a beanie. They found that the birds were more likely to remember the faces of the researchers when they were wearing the same hats they had during the tagging. This suggests that the birds use visual cues, like hats, to help them remember faces. In other words, birds are kind of like us. They use whatever visual cues they have available to them to help them remember faces. And that's why the ravens remember the faces of the researchers, both from their work with other birds and from the hats they were wearing. So next time you're out walking your dog, be sure to wear a hat. For the birds,